whatever part of the cage like severed the skin to cut my arm open, it actually severed the tendon. So the tendon didn't snap, it severed it. It got like clipped.
What's going on, wrestling fans? It is I, Steve Paul, and welcome to 10 Count right here on Wrestling News Co. On today's edition, I'm talking to the man who defeated Abe Lincoln for his championship belt. It's Bobby Fish. How you doing?
I'm good, man. I am living my best life over here. It's a little bit cooler here in Florida. We're closing in on Halloween. I got a few birthdays coming up, and yeah, so things are good.
Oh, man. I hope you're aware of that meme about people photoshopping you beating up Abe Lincoln before I drop that joke on you.
Oh no, the jokes I'm very aware of. I did not know there was a meme, but the jokes, yeah, I'm very aware of. Civil War, put over Abe Lincoln. I don't remember. I truly appreciate the creative ones, like the ones that you can tell there was a little effort put in there. Like those are the ones I like.
Yeah, those are pretty hilarious. But on today's edition, though, of 10 Count, we're going to stick to your Undisputed Era WWE run because you've done so much in professional wrestling. But first, your jump from Ring of Honor to NXT, how did this come to be? Because I imagine that you maybe are asking for more money in Ring of Honor or something along the lines of that. But what exactly made you leave Ring of Honor to come to the WWE?
There was so Roddy was already with NXT. Kyle, myself, and Adam, and the four of us were always tight behind the scenes. But between the four of us, or between the three of us that were still there, I our contracts just happened to be coming up all at the same time, similar time frames. And so everybody was doing their own individual negotiations. Kyle and my negotiations obviously had a lot to do with one another because of the Red Dragon thing. We were also working a lot with New Japan at that point. And I personally was talking with New Japan about a split that was going to favor them more than Ring of Honor, because the previous contract was heavier Ring of Honor, less New Japan, and this was going to kind of go the opposite. And then Adam and Kyle, there was definitely they were gonna go to NXT, and I was probably the last one that got the conversation moving, but then was the first one that did an appearance. So it was kind of funny in that way, just ironic. But eventually, once the conversation started, I mean, we all were very familiar with William Regal to begin with.
Okay.
He was we had all met him. Pro Wrestling Guerrilla was huge then, and it was still that kind of underground sort of, like the guys that can really work get booked at Pro Wrestling Guerrilla. And it just kind of came together so fast that I honestly don't even remember. And then next thing you know, like I'm walking into a place that I was pretty sure I had written off my to-do list just because I thought that, I'm older and, I've never been, I'm all of 5'8" on a good day, 5'9". So yeah, next thing I know, I'm walking into WWE.
Wow. Now, you brought up NXT as being the place that you ended up. Was there ever discussions of Raw and SmackDown being your first stop?
No, it was always NXT. And I know for myself, like I don't want to speak for the other guys. We were all kind of, collective whatever coming in, but there was no gimmick established. So none of us knew what we would be doing per se. But I do remember NXT at that time being the place. Like it was, I feel like New Japan was the place right before that. I feel like Ring of Honor was the place right before New Japan, which, just had the right combination of talent that was undiscovered but being discovered, and that was still kind of coming up but had arrived. And I feel like that's what NXT had become when Fergal, Shinsuke, people that Kevin Steen, um, people that they never expected to be in WWE were suddenly in WWE, and it created sort of an excitement of like, okay, well, who's going to be there next? And I remember previous to that watching a couple of the takeovers and those pay-per-views. They were just perfect. They were timed well. They were, every match was interesting, and like I said, you got to see a guy like Fergal Devitt, who you had only seen in New Japan and you never thought you'd see on a WWE TV, and there he was.
That is pretty intense to think, because for so long people would say, well, I don't watch WWE, but I do watch NXT. And I'm like,
Yeah.
oh. And then every weekend when you'd have a takeover and a pay-per-view on the same weekend, it turned into like who's gonna beat the show, because that year, right, like that was the place to be, the Ring of Honors and New Japan's. And now obviously you have more competition out there, but it's a fascinating story to see how NXT was. I don't watch WWE, but I watch NXT, and you coming in there. But Undisputed Era. Now, who comes up with this concept? Because obviously there was a relationship together in Ring of Honor, but who comes up with the idea of just let's just do what we did before? It worked.
Well, so Kyle and Adam had tagged before. Obviously, most people know that. And then Kyle and I, we did the Red Dragon thing. Like I said, Roddy had already left, but it was not really a trio was never really visited per se. But as we were coming out of Ring of Honor, they needed a way to get back to Adam and Kyle's issue, because they were going to be the blow off at Final Battle. And I know that Hunter Johnson, Delirious, his booking, he was a long-term booking guy, and I know that was the blow off Final Battle that he had planned for years. And in an effort to get there, Red Dragon, we were not splitting, but we were doing our own thing so that they could escalate Kyle and Adam. And somewhere in the midst of that, we did something where the three of us were allied in some way. Kyle and I were still loosely affiliated and still tagging in New Japan, and then Adam somehow, into the mix. And I do remember going to the office and mentioning like, hey, this feels great in some way. I feel like there's something here. And even if we don't, I'm not asking anybody to change their booking, but maybe we stay here a little longer, and then it gives it a little more oomph when the dissension breaks it apart. And they weren't really interested, and I don't blame them. I mean, that you have your long-term booking, and long-term booking, it shouldn't be changed on a whim. Anyway, that came and went, and things continued in the direction they did. So when NXT wanted to put the three of us together, and that was Hunter, Triple H, Hunter, that was an idea he presented to the three of us. And Kyle and I thought like, oh, okay, well, we might tag, but we never, we had never thought it'd be the three of us. So it was actually kind of one of those moments where it was like, all right, when's the shoe going to drop? When's the other shoe dropping? And you're going to tell us this is a joke. And it wasn't. And it turned out the way it turned out. And, to debut at the Brooklyn takeover, I don't know, it was perfect. I mean, there's a reason why Triple H is as good as he is because he's good.
Yeah, he's that damn good, I believe, is the catchphrase he uses for so long. And the Undisputed Era would go on to win so many championships, have great battles with other teams, become dominant, even becoming so popular that the War Games match was brought back into fold, not on Raw and not on SmackDown, but in NXT. So you technically are part of the first ever WWE War Games match. Now, when you
Yeah.
heard this news, when someone says to you, hey, we're going to do this match, it's going to be War Games, what's going through your brain? Because this has so much history towards it in the WCW, but people have been like asking for it since 2001 when WCW closed. So when you're pitched this or told this, do you believe it? Do you actually think this is going to happen?
Um, Not really. And then you're kind of just in the midst of it, so you're like taking it day by day, and things are going well, so you're just trying to enjoy it, trying not to get ahead of yourselves. But I mean, I'll say for one that era, the Crockett years, for lack of a better name, is the stuff that really got me loving wrestling, like really hooked me in. And so like the War Games, the VHS tape, my parents, I wore that thing out, like all of them. And to be a part of that history, Dusty Rhodes, uh, the Horsemen, the Road Warriors, Nikita Koloff, Barry Windham. I mean, Sting. Ever like so when you go through the first, I think it was the first four, right, in WCW. The first four War Games were all still, to me. I think those are the ones I really wore out. You know, endlessly, and to then be this generation's edition of that, yeah, that's still sort of surreal to think that that's how it went. And I think knowing Hunter and Shawn Michaels enough to know that like they were big fans of that era as well, no pun intended, but big Nature Boy fans and whatnot. So to be basically, I don't know, like NXT's Horseman,
Yeah.
um, to do it with three of my best friends, like legitimately three of my best friends, and then the icing on top of that cake that I wouldn't have believed when I was a kid anyway. Was the War Games? Yeah, I mean, just very, very cool.
Yeah, it was outstanding to see a return too, and obviously, at last year's Survivor Series, the WWE finally put it on their main card, and I think if your match wasn't such a success, they wouldn't have brought back War Games a year later, and they wouldn't have brought it back, put it on Survivor Series of all places as well. You
Hmm.
did bring up Sting for 1 second, and I want to talk about something a little topical for 1 minute. Sting recently announced that he is going to retire next year
Yeah,
on an AEW pay-per-view. And to me, Sting is my WCW guy. When I think of WCW, I think of Sting. I think of him in the NWO. But before that, you had Surfer Sting with Lex Luger and Ric Flair, Clash of Champions, all this good stuff. And
yeah,
Sting coming into WWE was kind of like, he did some work, but not really. TNA, though, he had a great body of work. But AEW, same thing with Darby Allin. You brought up Sting for a second. No, I was actually Sting one time for Halloween. Don't tell my WWE fans that. But how do you feel about Sting retiring in his body of work that he's pulled off, even after people thought he should have hung up the boots?
yeah. Well, first and foremost, I was one of those little stingers, like 100%. I was a big Brian Bosworth fan to begin with. So Sting, Surfer Sting, was very, Bosworth-ish, and I was a huge Sting fan, as I think a lot of people were. Around that time. I was probably one of the oldest Sting fans because I had put over Abe, like we established at the beginning of the show. Um, actually, the only thing I'm I'll be 115 years old at the end of the month.
Oh, well, girl, happy birthday. That's a lot of
Yeah,
candles.
and I'm holding up. I'm holding up.
You
I
do. You
can
look great.
run, Yeah. So anyway, Sting, just what an incredible career. I for him to still be doing some of the stuff that he's doing, um, and then to meet him, they you hear people say all the time, don't meet your heroes. And he, for one, when I was with AEW and I was fortunate enough to share a locker room with the man. And another surreal thing was, I got the bump for him, and what they did with him and Darby and what they have done, I think is one of the best things to come of that company. So far, I think it's every move's been really done well, and it's a credit to everybody there, and it's a credit to Steve himself, Sting. He I mean, he kind of transcends time in that way, and he was like the ultimate cool baby face at that time.
Yeah.
Like you couldn't be cooler than Sting at that time. Like he wasn't a Road Warriors ripoff, you know. Um, I think if you dig a little bit deeper into like the earlier days of his career, when him and Hellwig were like,
Yeah.
they might have been veering in that direction, but Sting, luckily for all of us fans, found his path. And yeah, I can't say enough positives about the man that I was able to converse with, personally a few times, and then professionally. I mean, it just lights out. Like, I'm not sure you can do any better.
No, you can't. Though it's funny is I wasn't Surfer Sting when I was a kid. I was Crow Sting, and
Uh,
so one year I was the Crow, and one year I was Sting, and so it's really the same outfit. But
right,
people will
right,
be like, "Oh, I really like your Sting outfit." Like, I'm the Crow. I'm the
right,
Crow. How dare you? How
right.
dare
Well,
you confuse
I
them?
appreciated it because it was, you recycled the costume one year
That's
to me.
true. That's
Yeah.
true. That is a good point. Yeah, I was Macho Man one year for Halloween as well. So,
Mm.
did you ever dress up as a wrestler for Halloween?
Not as a kid. I dressed up as a wrestler as an adult to go to it was after I had started wrestling. But it was just a costume that I could put together without spending much money. There was a Japanese fan years ago when I was working for Noah that came up and gave me a mask that he had made, and it was a fish mask. So it had like a marlin on the side, and I've never worn a hood in wrestling, but I had this thing forever, so I just paired it with some wrestling boots that I never wore, and a cape and something else, and I just went as like a luchador. So that's the only time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I have an LA I have a La Parka mask,
Ooh,
and I wear it around my neighborhood during Halloween, and some kids are freaked out by it. So we'll have to see. I also have an Uncle Howdy mask now as well, so we'll have to see how that goes down. But
okay, well, you should probably run that past your wife. Make sure it's going to be okay.
she can. Anyways, I want to save myself. But you were
Yeah,
involved with that War Games match, though. Eventually, though, Pat McAfee ends up in
yeah,
NXT as well, performing in the ring.
yeah.
Could you have called how easy it seemed to come to Pat McAfee? Now, I don't know what he did for training, but from a visual watching him on TV, I've seen some bad wrestlers, and
Uh,
he just showed up. And you're like, oh my God, this guy gets it. He understands everything that he's supposed to be doing, how he's supposed to speak, wrestle. What was your experience with him? Because he is someone everyone adores.
yeah, I mean, very much the same sort of sentiments. Pat was super respectful to all of us and to the industry and the art of what we do, or however you want to phrase it. And he was just like a super like personable and likable person, guy. He was one of the boys. And that's, I think, the mistake that, some people make, and maybe it's out of ignorance and they don't know. But I think coming from the NFL and major college football and all that stuff, like, how to be one of the boys. And it's a conscious decision to either be one of the boys or to be something else. And I think Pat, that was the vibe I picked up from Pat was, oh yeah, he's one of the boys.
Yeah, and of course his work with Michael Cole on SmackDown,
Yeah.
and obviously he has gotten huge contracts now with ESPN, so he's a tad busy. But most recently, go back maybe a month or two ago, he introduced The Rock to return to SmackDown. He had introduced John Cena to come to Fastlane, so he's obviously still involved. We'll have to see what happens with that.
Yeah.
Though one of the big moments that I think no one can ever forget is a tank pulling up on WWE while Raw and SmackDown are fighting, and NXT is showing up in the alleyway with a tank, come into battle. Outstanding. Keith Lee, though, was the one on that tank. Was there like a rock, paper, scissors that who got to stand on the tank and who didn't? Because I saw you walking on the side. Hey, one little turn, poof, you're gone.
Yeah, yeah. It was actually arm wrestling. We had arm
Oh,
wrestling as to see who would get which placement, and I can't beat Keith Lee in arm wrestling.
nobody can, I don't think. But what's that night like again? Because that was NXT was no longer, the farm leagues as it once was when we had Neville and Sami Zayn fighting for championships. Great wrestlers, but it was the farm league, and then it became the third brand. And at this point in time, it's the third brand because Survivor Series it was Raw versus SmackDown versus NXT. Going down in this tank, getting to the arena, people are going batshit crazy. How are you feeling internally?
It was really exciting because nobody knew exactly what was happening. We were finding out, right before, and then going out and performing, and like there was some like risk and danger involved to all of it, because you didn't know how it would be received, but then you didn't know which way they were going to go next. And I think that went top to bottom. I think everybody was really just kind of seeing what was going to come of these new moves, like these new directions. And it was super exciting at that time, in my opinion, because it was like, I don't know. I have a loose idea of the direction we're going, but I don't know what we'll be doing 2 weeks from now necessarily. And then to go up and get to do some stuff on Raw with Hunter, do like you said, the tank segment. We wrestled the New Day. We wrestled Todd and Ray. I don't remember at the
The
time
Viking Raiders?
if they had changed the name yet or whatnot, but like we got to do some Survivor Series stuff. It was really just a very very cool and exciting time to mix it up with what was then considered the main roster, and to be told, like, we're changing our perception and our attitude here, and we are the third brand, and we are, that was emphatic. It didn't come to be exactly like that, which was a little disappointing from a performer standpoint. But, to have that moment in my career, I'm grateful for it. I'm grateful for just all of it, all of my career, the ups, the downs. I mean, it's a charmed life that I've been fortunate enough to live.
Man, look at you and your wisdom over there. That's what that's what happens when you share, on the table with Thomas Jefferson and all
Yeah,
those very wise men back in the day.
John Hancock is on the declaration. It's there.
You were there.
Yeah,
Bobby Fish is on the bottom.
yeah,
Oh my God.
yeah.
Yeah, because eventually NXT though, it felt like it was going great, going great, going great. And then unfortunately Triple H like had a very scary health scare. And after that, from a perspective of a fan, or it looked like, oh, good, Triple H is no longer guarding the castle. let's fire people and let's change everything up, and NXT 2.0 appears. It was nuts. And not until recently has NXT finally gotten back to its roots, even involving main event stars like Becky Lynch and the Judgment Day, and most recently
Yeah.
John Cena was there, Undertaker was there. So there's, they're putting in the effort as when you were there to what it is and once was, I feel like now. But what was your relationship like with Triple H or even Shawn Michaels? Because both of these people, again, bringing back War Games, talking about that for a second, is they obviously respect the past and they understand that, how do we get to the next step? Well, obviously you were part of that process. What was your relationship like with them?
I mean, right from day one coming in, Hunter was hands on with us, and like I said, it was kind of his idea. Not even kind of, it was his idea. And at the end of the day, he was the guy calling the shots. So if it weren't, it wouldn't have happened. Um, and then eventually being one of Sean's guys, it all kind of came together gradually, and it grew in this organic way that just more and more responsibility was given to us as we proved with each opportunity that we were ready for it. So I don't think anything was given to us too soon and we weren't ready. It was like, okay, let's see if they're, we hired these guys because we think they're seasoned, and now let's see how seasoned they are. And I think every time we got a chance to get up to bat, we either hit a home run or, a triple or maybe a double here and there. But, we weren't really singles guys, and we weren't walking to get on base. We were doing well. And I think that the more they trusted us, the more opportunities we were given. So I feel like the relationship with Hunter and Sean was always great.
Were you shocked though when the Undisputed Era kind of unfortunately it didn't fizzle out, but it also didn't have the conclusion that many people thought would happen? Because eventually, as you brought up Ring of Honor, the Kyle O'Reilly Adam Cole thing happened there. Well, it happens in NXT as well. But look, while you're hurt and Roderick Strong is kind of off doing his own thing, it didn't feel like the Undisputed Era was so hot and out of nowhere it's just like, wait, what happened to it? Where'd it go? Like, what were your thoughts on that?
I think and I don't know, it's above my pay grade, those decisions, what they were, how they were being made. But I think after the Pat McAfee angle, I think everyone anticipated that doing a little more. And I don't know what, I'm not privy to all of the information as to why that went shorter than expected. And I just don't think they knew what to do at that point. We had done everything but split. And yeah, I had torn my tricep in the War Games. So, and the tear was like a total freak accident. Um, Whatever came through, whatever part of the cage like severed the skin to cut my arm open, it actually severed the tendon. So the tendon didn't snap, it severed it. It got like clipped. um, so that was a longer heal than I think any of us anticipated, and so they still had Adam and Kyle and didn't necessarily know what to do. And I think it was like, I think it was just, it was the only option left on the table that hadn't been visited. And if it sits there long enough, like eventually, yeah, it's going to happen.
And so there was never ever a discussion, even when you weren't hurt, that the Undisputed Era should be drafted to Raw or SmackDown.
Uh, there were definitely times that it was discussed. How earnest those discussions were, I don't know. Again, above my pay grade. I wasn't privy to that side of it, but I know conversations were had. I know that the stuff that we did on Raw and SmackDown and with Survivor Series and whatever was all well received. You know, the segment we did with Hunter on Raw, I know went well, and then when we jumped the New Day and I don't remember what their name was in
Viking
WWE.
Raiders.
No, FTR.
Oh, the Revival.
That's who they were. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, oh, I'm like, what's their name? Like, I was like, Revival.
Yeah.
Is it Revival? Revival.
I
See,
felt
if I keep saying it, I think it's right.
FTR at this point, but yeah, I mean, I feel like all those segments were well received. So it was like, I think, and I just think that people, they did not want to see us break up. They didn't want to see us not together. I think that speaks to some of, Hunter's, uh, for lack of a better term, brilliance in putting us together. None of us were the biggest guys in the world, but we could all work. We all brought similar talents, but were unique in our own ways. So like the sum of the parts was greater than the parts, and I don't think every group has to disband. I think some groups, the fans just they don't want to see that, and I don't think they wanted to see it. Therefore, they didn't show up for it breaking up in the way that other storylines go.
Right, because if you look at any other faction or any tag team that existed in NXT, when they were brought up, they didn't break up, or they didn't break up before they were brought up. Like Sanity was a misfire when they got brought up, but still they were brought up as a group.
Yeah.
Look at everybody, Street Profits from Enzo and Cast, really to anyone. And there's so many examples of groups that got brought up or tag teams that got brought up that didn't break up. But Undisputed Era, again, there was one, I think it was on New Year's Eve maybe, but there's like an NXT award show, the Slammies, and Undisputed Era, it became comical watching it because it's like, here's you go, tag team of the year. It was like you and Kyle. Then it was like, okay, main event star of the year. Oh, it's Adam Cole. Oh, okay. And then the faction of the group, a faction of the year. Oh, it's Undisputed Era. Match of the year.
Yeah.
Undisputed Era is involved with that. It was so funny. By the end, you guys were all holding all the awards, and I think that's the image. I think I always want to keep my brain of seeing you and your friends together. Now, obviously, Adam Cole, unfortunately, he eventually leaves the WWE, goes to AEW, great run, and then he got injured, and he was out for a while. Then he returned. Him and MJF were having a great run. Unfortunately, Adam Cole got hurt again. You speak with your friends, Roderick Strong, who's obviously still hurt. His neck is just can't get better on AEW TV. Adam Cole with his leg. Like, what is going on, you think, between all these characters? Because even Kyle O'Reilly, he's hurt. Like, is there something in the water with the Undisputed Era being poisoned slowly somewhere? Like, what is happening to all your friends?
No, I think what it is more than anything that this industry, this business is difficult on the body. It leaves a scar, right? And I think we're guys that over the course of our careers, individually or collectively, we always kind of prided ourselves on being the workhorses and taking the bumps. And like I know specifically for Kyle and I, one of the matches I reference back to a lot of times is from a takeover of Philadelphia, and it was us versus AOP, and Paul Ellering's on the floor. So to me, it couldn't have been any more, Tully and Arn versus the Road Warriors. It was like, so that kind of stuff. I think, I know that night, like Kyle and I took pride in making everything look great, and it didn't matter what toll that took on our on our us physically. And Sonny and Z they're big boys. So I just think you're seeing kind of that wear and tear of this is a brutal business. And on top of that, like the other guys, I know it's similar, but like, I mean, I've been doing contact sports since I was 8 years old. So I've lived most of my life, throwing myself, my head, my back, my legs into other objects and other people, like, the body, it starts to break down a little bit. But I think, injuries are just a part of it. And all of us are still capable and able to go. But like, you got to take time and heal. I mean, shit, you're human.
Right. I sleep on my arm wrong. I'm hurt for a couple of days. You guys are out there doing backflips off cages and slamming each other down. And they said you've been fighting since you were 8. So that was,
Yeah.
400 years ago. So there's a lot going on there when you're kicking a dinosaur in the ankle, trying to take him down.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I was, it was, I think the Last Supper.
You're in the back of the picture, in the back kicking somebody.
So, yeah, I was a little kid.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
I got 2 more questions. One, here's the strangest place you've ever wrestled.
Whew. I don't know about the strangest place I've ever wrestled, but I'll say the strangest locker room I was ever fortunate enough to be in. Or, well, let me think. Is there a strangest place I've wrestled? I don't, yeah. I'm going to say that, I mean, the first one that came to mind was, it was when I was working for Pro Wrestling Noah, and we were in Japan. It was one of the northern towns, brutally cold winter, snow, etc., and the venue didn't have like indoor locker rooms, so we were at like U-Haul trucks with space heaters. That's where we were changing. Those were our locker rooms. So not the strangest place I wrestled, but the strangest place I got dressed and undressed before I wrestled.
Well, that's a good story, though. That is a good story. Yeah, I've been asking a few wrestlers here and there, strangest places, and I'm always interested to hear. I'm like, oh my, you wrestled there, or you did this, or
Right. What's the strangest one you've gotten so far?
Well, I've only done it with like 3 or 4 people. Nakamura told me that he wrestled Carl Anderson in front of 5 people when they had their dog. It was 5, a little Mexican family told me, and their dog was there watching him and Carl Anderson wrestle. That was one. Recently, and then you get the stories of in the barn or in someone's garage. But hey,
Yeah.
they were the adventure of becoming who you are today. Sometimes an adventure is not always going to be fun, but it's an adventure. You always learn a lesson, and apparently you learn that you can change your clothes in a U-Haul, the little space heater. And this is the winter you're talking about?
Oh, it was freezing. Yeah, yeah. I mean, like the northern island in Japan, Hokkaido, anything up that way, like, I mean, you're almost you're almost in Russia. So,
Oh my God. Well, that the I don't think we're going to top you getting naked in a U-Haul in the middle of winter with a heater in front of your crotch, and hopefully nothing happened there. But all in all, it has been a pleasure talking to you one more time, Bobby Fish. I had an interview with you maybe a year and a half ago that gave me nightmares. This one will not give me nightmares, so we are good. We are taken care of. We didn't say anything crazy, unless you want to ask crazy questions. No crazy questions then. Well, Bobby,
nothing crazy.
Nothing crazy. We'll keep it light. We'll keep it fluffy for the people who can't take a quote out of what you said here. But you probably said something somewhere that you pissed somebody off, but who knows?
Something who knows?
All in all, I know is you're going to take on Taylor Swift at WrestleMania. But I've been Steve Ball. He's Bobby Fish. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.